Our next speaker is Irene Stengs. We have two Irenes today. Irene Stengs. She is from the KNW Meertens Institute, and she has a very interesting perspective on waste from the ritual side. What does waste mean to people? Waste also has a history. And, so we have this particular view on new public rituals, and Irene is going to tell something about it today. Oh, yeah, yeah. Okay. The floor is yours. My glasses. Yeah, I'm always thirsty.
Technical society.
Yes.
I'm from social sciences, so don't you?
No, I don't know. We have some scientists.
There it is. Okay. You don't want the mic?
That depends on the audience. I don't need the mic because I know what I'm going to say. Do you think I'm not really?
Well, it would be better.
You can hear me like this? Yeah? So, thank you very much for inviting me. I'm very happy to share my research and my ideas on waste with you, and I hope I really can contribute a bit to all what you are doing. As you understand, as a social scientist maybe, or maybe that's not self-evident, but I'm not really directly into innovations or technical solutions, but actually this whole idea and the importance of waste came to me through my own research. And I'm an anthropologist, and I'm conducting research in the Netherlands on rituals and public popular culture. I mean, yeah, that's quite public. And specifically, I have one line of research which is on commemorative rituals, and that's how I came into this topic. I will tell you about that more in detail, specifically a little bit later. First, I want to say something about my general ideas on waste, as far as I could so far. First of all, what I liked about this idea, this network is an in-between. So, and I find this a stimulating fit with the concept or the theme and topic of the whole network, and that's, I think, waste itself is also an in-between. And for me, this material, the idea that people think that certain stuff is waste and other stuff is not waste, that's not so clear. So to me, waste is a very ambiguous matter. And so then for me as an anthropologist, I always start to think then from, let's say, what we call deconstruction. It's not the same as disposal. And then what you already said, and also Alex, I will link up with these ideas on the, and what I also found on the network, this idea that there is this, that waste has a history, so you have to know the history of creation in a way. And I also like this idea of waste narratives, what Irene also brought in. So I think that's very close to the way that I look at waste, because that will bring in indeed localities and local people, and that is local knowledge, in the particular in the sense that people know and recount those narratives about the waste and how it is created. So contemplating some more about the topic, Alex, she wrote on her one of her blogs that says, well, the many ways in which we can think about waste, I quote her now, in relation to place, space and buildings becomes almost overwhelming, or something like that, and it was also causing panic attacks about the ground that the network is trying to cover, and I think indeed that is too much if you want to think on waste like that. So maybe the challenge for us lie in combining more abstract, theoretical if you like, or general notions of what waste might be, with indeed these specific local narratives and circumstances in which matter is experienced as waste and is created as waste, and how people can subsequently deal with it. So for me, and I just know, let's see what this is. Yeah, it's helpful to think about waste as a sensitizing concept. In Dutch, just to translate, is an attenderend concept. So it's something that is not something you cannot really define, or there's no essence to waste. But it helps all of us to gear our attention to something that we all think, oh, this is waste. This. So because there are many family resemblances in waste that comes back every time. You know, so if you have a brother and a sister, you can see they come from the same parents, but a different color of hair and a different, maybe different nose or something, but still you see these family resemblances. And something like happens with idea of waste too. There are things that overlap, but it's not the same all the time. But we still can recognize it. So what then makes things or stuff waste? That's one dimension. Then I also think of waste as dynamic. So in the sense that the status of basically all stuff, you could say, whether it's objects or places or buildings, that depending on time and circumstances, tend to move between the two polar ends of to be treasured, protected and maintained, and the other polar end then to be redundant and to be disposed of. So it might move. There's no fixed. You cannot be certain about it. So, and then, yeah, that already said, my research is not straightforwardly about waste, but about this ritual in the public domain. And these commemorative rituals brought under my attention the matter, or the stuff, if you would say, that is produced in such rituals, and the way that present-day societies deal with this stuff. And that is what I call this ritually produced matter. I have called sacred waste. I have also nice with this contribution. So, first to show you that that there is something specific about ritual in the public domain and stuff, ritual stuff. I just show you some pictures. It's a very modest ritual space. This is a roadside memorial at the Dappermarkt. That's a big market in Amsterdam. It's a very crowded place, and you can see this. Very sadly, a boy died there, and every year, but not only on his day of dying or his day of birth, this place is, let's say, demarcated by the ritual year. So we see Valentine's Day here, or it may be Easter, or so you see actually how the calendar of the living and the calendar is connected here in this space with the death. And people and the parents and other people bring stuff here. So, for instance, this is on his day of after commemoration of his of the day of death, and you see people bring flowers and candles, and it's amazing that people really think that this stuff is something special, because although it's crowded and people and cars coming and going, it's untouched. So this. Apparently this matter or this stuff has a specific value. It's a bit sacralized, I would say. And see, this is after 1 month. It's unbelievable, and then it's gone. Of course, it cannot hold forever. But there is something that really slows down this process of disposal. It's difficult for people just to get rid of it. It does something to people. So, that's just already a taste of what I'm thinking about. So what are for me core notions that are characteristic for sacred waste, but maybe also for waste more broadly? First of all, I would say presence. So there is stuff in the environment that manifests itself, and it urges people to act, to deal with it. I would say leaving it on the spot, like at the Dappermarkt roadside memorial, is also a way of dealing with it. It's not only people work around it. It's performative. It affects people and its environment. So then also very often, specifically in the context that I encountered it, it's also abundancy, how do you say that? So there's often dimensions of huge quantities. and or many. So there's a kind of this element of redundancy at a certain moment. So this is problematic. This idea of huge quantities, well, we know waste. And then that, of course, it links up with this is management. The dealings are not self-evident. The stuff has to be brought under control and forces people to make ethically, possibly impossible choices. Sometimes. That's another dimension for me, at least for sacred waste. And then in addition, I'm very much interested in the idea of value. And I'm not thinking primarily here of economic value, although that's also a dimension. But I'm more thinking of an emotional or sacred or moral values. That's one. And the second, related to this is the process of charging. So this material that I'm talking about is ritually charged or charged with a value, and that is happening because of the specific place or the specific event or the specific ritual in which it's generated. So this is this history of creation, what is important. And then finally, just I would say for me at least, this of course you could say it's also on an individual or more personal level, because everybody has objects which are loaded or charged with specific emotional or sacred value. But for me, I'm more interested in this public dimension, because actually this impacts wider society. You see, so that's actually, so I want to bring in this public dimension for certain. Okay. Yeah? Oh no, not finished yet. Oh, it's not finished. Already half an hour talking now. I thought I had half an hour. Yeah, even half an hour. So how many minutes then?
No,
Really? But see, because I now wanted to show something more of my research, and what's important and what's interesting, I think, because it's this interdisciplinary situation, is this involvement of scientific institutions and also museums and possibly also the arts in dealing with sacred waste. Okay, so I really take from the significance of this material, the materiality, and what I'm actually after is to understand these processes that charge this stuff with meaning. That's what I'm after. And what kind of values are then involved if this stuff is charged with meaning? And thinking about this, so it was actually through my research then that I got to this idea of the notion of sacred waste. It was not something that I thought, oh, maybe it's sacred waste. No, because of the research I thought, what stuff is this? And then I came to this notion. And that's implies then this ritually matter is both sacred and waste at the same time. And it's paradoxical, of course. And so actually that implies that we are dealing here with objects or substances that cannot be disposed of as just garbage or rubble, but neither can be kept or left alone. We have to do it. So this is the notion of dealing with. And then usually only part of it can be kept, while the other part has to be disposed of, and that subsequently acquires the status of waste. So it's really about status. But then, of course, you may ask, which parts to preserve and which part to dispose of. So what arguments or criteria are mobilized to actually make these selections? So this idea of selection is also crucial. So I will start, I will bring in through three cases, that I hopefully I make it, but very briefly, where I tracked the stuff, you could say, and I will start with the Queen's Day tragedy that happened that in 2009. I don't know if everybody knows it, but we have yesterday we had King's Day, but then before we had Queen's Day. It appears that many people, also tourists, booked the hotels for the 30th of April, still thinking about the Queen's Day date.
Yeah.
But in 2009 we had the Queen's Day tragedy. That was then during the Queen's Day parade. There was a car actually just driving into the crowd, and actually it was like an attack on the Queen and the family, but instead the driver killed, I think 7 people, including himself. So that's, and then, as always, as usual in this kind of circumstances, people come to the place where this of tragedy, of mischief, and bring flowers. And I don't know if you can see it's a bit light, but
I don't know where it is. Thank you.
oh, yeah, okay.
I know what it is.
No, no problem. I'm not really reading. So I do it by hand. It's okay. It's okay. I can deal with that. I don't need my glasses now anymore.
One higher, is that possible?
Okay, yeah, take the mic here. Yeah. Okay, so this is so what happened actually was that of course you have to deal with this stuff. Well, after the formal ceremony, commemorative ceremony was closed. It was actually 10 days later or something. There was this atelier in the neighborhood of Apeldoorn. This is in the neighborhood of Apeldoorn. This is in Apeldoorn, by the way. But this atelier offered to the municipality of Apeldoorn to collect the stuff and for maintenance. So actually, so what they did was actually they collected everything except for the flowers, the candles, and maybe some other things which are possible to do. But all the papers and cuddle toys and everything was something like, well, if it came to paper, it was dried and it was flattened and it was disinfected with gamma radiation. And that all together, this whole process of preservation took 3 months. And then it was stored in boxes and brought to the Coda Museum in Apeldoorn. And actually, because it could not be disposed of. You see? And but so so that's how I found out about this atelier who did this kind of thing. It was like a charity, and actually they had done this before. They had done this after the Enschede fire disaster. That was actually when a whole storehouse of firework exploded in the neighborhood and left 9 people dead at least, and many hundreds of people wounded. And also this municipality felt that they could not just dispose of the things that were brought to the place. And then this founding father of the atelier, he said he offered his assistance in, and so that's how this tradition of assisting in this kind of tragedy came into existence within this workshop. And so when in 2004 we had a political killing, you know, maybe Theo van Gogh. He was a filmmaker and public critic, and he was killed in 2004 by a Muslim fanatic. Was critical, and he actually there was a huge memorial also coming into existence in the Linnaeusstraat in Amsterdam. And at a certain moment, that is a problem. Of course, you cannot. That's what I said. You cannot just keep it there. It has to be taken from the main road, and then you have to do something with it. So what they did, the Amsterdam municipality came then in the early morning to collect the stuff, and that was exactly like with the Queen State tragedy already 5 years later. The same company, this atelier, flattened it, dried it and everything, and mostly went to the city archive. I can show you where it is digitalized, but it's also kept. That was wonderful. See? And there you can, it's like a digital monument. You can click on it if you want to see what's written here, and then it pops up enlarged. It's an amazing project. It's not all of it went to the city archive. Another part, let's see if we go back to the PowerPoint. Where? Another part went to the Amsterdam Historical Museum, Amsterdam Museum now these days, and to the Rijksmuseum. You see here, this is, for instance, this photo I took. This is by coincidence. This is you see this film can in the middle, and then there's written text on it, and that one went as like a relic, you could almost say, to the Rijksmuseum. That's the museum, Dutch Museum of National History. You can show, you can visit the site, and then you, hopefully, no, we don't visit the site. Oh, we do, yeah. Yeah. You see, and there you can find it. It's in the collection, but you can only. It's not exhibited in the museum, but you can. Maybe they will have one time. But they have this kind of relics which are from Dutch national history, tragedies, and actually this can is also has become part of that. Okay. So that a third important event which produced a lot of commemorative stuff was the killing or the murder on Pim Fortuyn. He was a politician and he was killed in 2002. And then there was this idea the family was left with the problem what to do with all these items that were brought to several places related to Pim Fortuyn. And there was first this idea to ritually burn it, that's actually quite a good solution maybe, with Pim Fortuyn himself in his grave in Italy. But then, and that's also interesting, then a researcher of my own institute, he actually convinced the family not to do that, but to have it collected and stored in our own institute. So so we can go to our own site now. Here we are. You see, it's another exhibition. It's like a slideshow, and we have in our institute this collection of items and letters, and maybe also what's the stropdas over here? Ties, yeah, things or items like that. At the same time, not everything is stored in our institute, because, for instance, the cuddle toys, not. So what's interesting here are the arguments that are mobilized, what to select and keep and what not. So for instance, and it's interesting to talk a little bit about the teddy bears and cuddle toys that were brought to these sites. First of all, the family of Pim Fortuyn, and it was a whole container full of cuddle toys, thought that they could not just be disposed of, but it could be a good gift for children in third world countries. This whole formulation is also interesting. So it was stored in this container, but then the costs for cleaning and disinfection or whatever was too high, and that never happens. Then, of course, my colleague then actually convinced the family by saying, well, you can better bring it to our institute as part of the collection, because it's like national heritage. So that's one more argument to mobilize. You have to make it into heritage to give this another value, you could say. It would also be scientifically important. It's like an ethnography of the Netherlands you could make of the certain period. Yes? Yeah, that's right. And you could so then in this argumentation was, well, these cuddle toys would not add anything in terms of scientific knowledge. So so what happens here, and that's maybe a good part of to end with, is that actually first of all it's kind of sacralized, or it has this moral value. It says all this stuff says something about society and where we stand for. So this is loaded with grief and anger and all these emotions that are into this stuff. Then, actually, so when it cannot be disposed of, but the certainty that part of it would become Dutch national heritage and scientifically important, that made that these cuddle toys, which were actually first also sacred, then became more trash. So there's this tug of war going on within the material itself between sacred and trash. And that's actually, it's only when the other side part was lifted up, they could be really desacralized and be disposed of. And I think these are the processes that I'm interested in. And I just want to say that it's not only commemorative stuff that these problems are with, but also, for instance, I think of the Pont des Arts in Paris, where you have all these lava logs on the bridge. This bridge collapsed because of the loads of logs. They had to restore the bridge, and then the city authorities, because it's actually could not get rid of the logs, didn't want to dispose of it, so they are stored. And why? That's interesting to ask, because you know all this romantic love, that's actually all these promises for eternal love and faithfulness. That is the cornerstone of the Dutch of our Western society. So if you just throw it away like that, you know, that's difficult. So I just want to bring this up, that if you look at these various rituals, you will see different moral values and moods up and up. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.